Shattuck. I'm recently retired, but I'm back in the spring to teach this class. It's a class I really love and enjoy the community of students that the class, I think, creates. What is this class? We use literature, so I try to find the very best literature I can, memoirs, novels, plays, and poetry, to explore not the science of illness. I think we do a lot with the science of illness, but actually the quite personal human experience of illness. The course is divided up into 3 basic sections: illness and individual identity, illness and family identity, and illness and institutional identity. So we look at stories that address each of those experiences. There's a paper on each of those, but at the end of the course we do a final project that's integrated where students will do something where they want to research the science of an illness, but also it has to be integrated with a narrative. So when I began teaching this class, I taught it with Dr. Mary Canales from nursing, and unfortunately Mary left. And so the class has moved a little bit more to the humanities than it used to be because she was really doing a lot more of the science. So it's a fairly strong, I think, humanities-based class. But one of the things we were trying to do together that I think the class still does is to try to talk about how integrating knowledges of science and humanities is really necessary to the healing process. She was very concerned that nursing students in particular get the kind of understanding of what people go through when they're ill. And of course, all of us are going to be ill someday if we're not already. We know people with serious illnesses. And this class, in fact, talks to some degree about how we're living in a time when you can have a serious illness and function well in society. You know, I have a chronic illness, and I think I would have been dead years ago if I lived, even 50 years ago. But now I feel rather healthy. So we talk a lot about the kinds of spectrums of illness and health in our society. A couple of the themes that we talk a lot about would be stigma, the way that people feel stigmatized in society by certainly certain illnesses, isolation. This class can be kind of sad, but actually I try to find a lot of the material has redemptive, I think honestly redemptive things in it, like when you become ill, often you find that it's not just losses, but you have gains in your understanding about life, and even gains in skills. We look at things like that, where if you lose one ability, sometimes other abilities come forward for you. We also talk about language and how language can either empower or often disempower people with illness, depending on how language is used. And I guess at the very core of the course is the idea of empathy, because I think that's what literature tries to do, is open a place of vulnerability where we share our understanding of other people and hopefully begin to empathize. But that word empathy, I think you hear it a lot. It's become kind of a soft word, and we do a lot of digging. What actually is empathy, and how is empathy used ethically? Because it can actually be used often in ways that appropriate other people's experiences. So we look at that through the literature. All of this comes out through the stories that we read, and the class is very discussion-based. So we use, every time I teach this class, it's different because we use often the same text, but the students have different interests, and those interests drive the discussions. It's a 300 level class. Nobody's spoken about this yet, but I do want to say that I teach this class in the same way I would teach a 300 level normal literature class. I mean, it's a lot of reading. I think you guys can do that reading, and my students have always risen to that occasion. But we do, it's a lot of reading. We do writing, it's, I guess what I want to say about that, though, is even though we do the same workload as a 300 level, maybe English majors class, I do not expect everybody in the class to be an English major. In fact, I don't expect really almost anyone to be a major in the class. We start at kind of ground level, that you maybe haven't read very much literature. We talk about, you know, what literature is, what it's trying to do. So it's a kind of ground up course, but you do, from the ground up, I mean, but you do read a lot. So I want to just give you that quick caveat. I have a couple of students in the room here. They can tell you if they thought it was too much, but generally I think people think it's a well-paced course.